Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
We are on our trip going down to
The doctor.
We're going to the doctors to get things checked out. This is our trip, and take a ride with us.
Okay.
And you've been pretty regular about the same time each month?
Yeah, 26, 27.
Okay. Well, when we have to fall back to IVF, you know, that IVF, we use it to overcome a lot of things. It can overcome, it bypasses the tubes, so we don't really, use those. Though it's a really low risk, though some people, you can still get an ectopic pregnancy. An embryo can sometimes get sucked into the tube, but it's really uncommon. But it also bypasses any scar tissue from the fibroid surgeries, and it takes the eggs out of the environment, which is a lot of what affects them with endometriosis. We get those eggs, we try to get a good number of eggs, because every egg is not capable of making a pregnancy. So we want to get as many as we can to stack the odds in our favor. And so some of how many we get kind of depends on your ovary function. Age is not our friend, and so one of the things we need to reassess is just where you stand ovary function.
Okay.
So the questions is really ovary function. And so what we would do first is recommend rechecking some blood work when your period comes.
Okay.
These couple labs we use are done in the first couple of days. So we will recheck some blood work.
My period should start on the 12th, Saturday.
That's fine. So call when your period starts. If it starts on a weekend, just call Monday morning.
Okay.
So we'll plan blood work somewhere around days 1 to 3 of the cycle. So if it starts on a Saturday, just call Monday and plan on coming in Monday sometime.
Okay.
And then with that, so we're going to look at the ovary function. And one of the things we do is run what's called a Unify report. The Unify report is a kind of a computer algorithm that looks at your information and your situation to give you a rough estimate of odds of success, but we use it as an objective way to kind of stratify you and your odds. So it lets us make some of the different financial options available. And so once we get that, then we can use that to get you some of the finalized cost info. Are you going anywhere else?
No.
You're not
I'm
going.
fighting every time they try to move me from now until.
Okay,
Yeah.
so no plans of you
No.
up and leaving anytime soon?
No.
Okay. Well, what branch are you in?
I'm in the Army Reserves.
And yes, you were in Poland in the middle of all the COVID stuff, but that was scary in Europe.
It wasn't. Yeah, stress levels through the roof.
I bet, yeah. Hard being away from home, let alone at that time of the year.
Exactly.
The world. But that's one of the first things we would kind of do. We will take a look as we go along at your uterus, re-look and make sure you haven't had any new little fibroids come up. There, I had taken a look last year. You had one little one, but it wasn't in an area that would have affected us. So we'll kind of watch that. There's always a question about the effect of the underlying endometriosis. That doesn't really affect us getting the eggs, but that can affect the uterus when it comes time to put the embryos back inside. So the idea is we coordinate everything based off your cycle. to try to stimulate your ovaries to give us a bunch of eggs. The more the merrier. So that takes some coordination, about a month of coordinating, and then starting the process of using the medicines to develop the eggs. Those medicines, typically 10 to 11 days of the medicines, same amount of time it takes your body to make one as it takes to make 10 or 15. During that time, we monitor you closely with ultrasound and blood work, making sure that they're developing at the right pace. When the eggs are all developed, then we go in and harvest them. That is done under some sedation. It's a light sedation, like if you were having a colonoscopy or a wisdom tooth extraction. Because through an ultrasound, we have a needle that goes through the vagina and pokes into the ovaries a couple of times. So you want to be out for that. And but pretty easy recovery. We never give women pain medicine usually. They just say it feels like a period day. That's the day we get your sperm sample. You give us a sample that day and we fertilize those eggs. And we let them grow for 5 days in the lab, which is as long as we can keep them outside the uterus. Normally they attach on the uterus around the 6th to 7th day. And that keeping them outside there, letting them grow, serves as a selection process to show us which ones are more likely to be able to make a pregnancy. We try to get a bunch of eggs because there's this very depressing drop-off as a couple goes. All the eggs you get, not all of them get fertilized. Even with great sperm, about 30% of them don't fertilize. So you get the step down. Of the ones that fertilize in 5 days, about 50% of them won't survive those 5 days. And then of those embryos you have, not all of those will make babies. So that's why we try to start with as many as we can get out of you. So looking at this ovary function will give us a rough idea of how many we can get out of you. The more, the merrier. The real question is kind of how good are my eggs? And you've got so many other factors, it's hard to show that. That's more age is, like I said, always affects us, but some women can still be very fertile, and the more factors she has, the more likely is she can have pretty decent quality eggs. Once we get those little embryos, we stop there and then we freeze them and let all the hormones wash out of your system. And then, depending on kind of what we have to work with, depends on what we do, how we get the uterus ready. In some situations, and we'll talk about this a little further as we go, sometimes we may do some tests of the uterus to see if it's being affected by the endometriosis still. If so, then that can reduce the ability of an embryo to attach in the uterus. And that is sometimes treated hormonally for a little while, a couple months worth of hormone treatment to shut down all of that endo before putting an embryo back inside. And so we'll kind of have to talk about that along as we go, but none of that affects the getting of them. So you kind of got to get them first and see what you have to work with, and then based on what you have to work with, kind of tells us best what to do and how to kind of treat you as we go along. So it's a coordinating process, takes a lot of logistic planning, starting at least a month or so ahead of time. But the first thing to do will probably be to check some of the blood work when your period comes. Okay, that's kind of a first step to get us started. We had done a semen analysis on you in the past. Okay.
They weren't remarkable.
It's been a couple years though.
Yeah, the last one we did was really good.
Yeah, it's been 2 years. Yeah, the last one was okay. What we'd probably do as we get closer to that is maybe just have you do another one to make sure something hasn't gone south. It's been 2 years, and just as we get older.
Do I need to get on the medication again?
Probably so, because I'd had you on that, but you've not been on that for now a while.
Yeah.
I'd probably say go ahead and do that because it can take a while to turn things back up.
He did change a couple of things that were probably affecting that. He stopped smoking and he's vegetarian. So.
Yeah, that stuff never hurts. But what I would do is I would say just for the heck of it is restart you on the medicine. So
Yes.
that is the time starter, and then that could take that. Because you felt okay when you took that.
Yes.
What pharmacy do you use? Do you still use the one on White Horse?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll send you over a new prescription for that, and go ahead and get started on that now.
Okay.
What I'd probably say though, because we did improve you a fair bit compared to where you were.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd probably do is say go ahead and schedule an analysis now,
Mm-hmm.
and that will tell us if we need to wait on him. Because if that's something that we got to brew, it takes a few months for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd probably say, why don't we go ahead and start you on the medicine no matter what, but go ahead and let's just see where you stand right now.
Okay.
If it looks fair, the medicine will help, but it won't hurt. It'll cook it a little bit, but if it happens to look really bad, then we need to kind of hold a little bit until we get to a better place.
Okay.
So I'd probably say schedule an analysis whenever you can, and then get some blood work when your period starts. And then depending on, but I'd try to, because your period's probably coming in 2 weeks or so, a week and a half. This coming weekend you were talking about? Okay.
I mean, I can probably do that analysis tomorrow.
Yeah, if you want to, I'm sure they can squeeze that in. But that would be a game changer there, have to wait on that. But I would say that would be the first step, is see that. That'll tell us, that'd be a biggest hold up. And then see kind of where your ovary function sets. Kind of depending on your ovary function, kind of depends on how we kind of treat you going into that cycle. But it's a very controlled process as we go along. We walk you through it. Once everything is ready, we give you a little spreadsheet timeline of this day you do this day you do this, and as long as you kind of follow along, it's all very laid out.
So my only concern is, because we've been doing this process for a very long time and investing a lot, if there is a high probability that this will not be successful, would you tell us so that we don't invest it in?
I will always give you my best view. Now, everything I do is gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm always trying to do the odds, and so a lot of that will reflect the egg function, ovary function. Make sure you give us a good number of eggs, because it is a numbers game. The
Mm-hmm.
more, the merrier. And everything else is details about, like, do we need to do anything about the uterus or treat that for the endo? So, it's a question as we kind of go along the way. As women get older, one of the things that can be helpful in a situation like this is actually of those embryos that we often will do genetic testing of those embryos. Because as I said, not all of them fertilize, and the ones that fertilize, not all of them make embryos. And of those embryos, not all of those make babies. Genetic testing can take that selection a step further by weeding out the ones that aren't any good. And those are ones that were never going to work or would miscarry. And the real benefit that comes when you're above 35. That can be beneficial. So that's something that maybe would probably strongly help us with the situation, because that lets us know what we truly have to work with, to then let us know truly how we need to treat you beforehand. So the genetic testing is something that I would definitely consider.
Before everything.
Yeah, because that lets you know because if you may have 5 embryos, and of those 5, based on statistics, 2 or 3 of them might be good and 2 might not. But you can have anywhere between 1 to 5 normal, or 0 to 5 normal ones. Mm-hmm. And especially in your situation where there was an endo issue, which means I may need to treat you ahead of time, it's better to do that knowing what we got to work with.
Okay.
If there wasn't an endo issue, then the genetics don't always help us, because we would just say, well, these are ones we're going to use, and we'll just keep using them until we hit the good ones.
Right.
But if we've got to prepare some stuff ahead of time, which I suspect we will need to, since it's been so long in you, that it can help us know what we're really working with to kind of minimize that, kind of optimize getting to success.
So the endo would be median or birth control?
No, it's a little bit different hormonal, a little more intense of shutting down the hormones, just to trying to get that settled down. But we'll talk about that as we go. A lot of it will depend on how the uterus looks. If this little fibroid's grown or not. It was fine where it was. Hopefully it hasn't changed too much. But we'll reassess that as we go.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So that first thing is just, I would just have them schedule you. Would you want to do that at home and drop it off, or come here?
I'll come here.
Okay. And so she'll just schedule a time for you. And then you just call us when your period starts. To do the blood work in those first couple of days, and I'll have a note on that, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
And get this ball rolling.
Yeah.
Okay, so and some of these other details, we'll figure that out as we go.
Okay.
Okie doke?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
I'm
so
glad
much.
you made it home safe.
Mm-hmm.